Hey YouTube. Juice, the developer of Grain Science, has released Mitosynth, which is a really unique synth that's doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but there's no time! Come with me, I'll explain on the way! The way that you make the sounds is open to several different ways. There's a sampler, which is obvious. You can throw in your own samples, and it comes with a whole bunch of different ones. And there's also a full-on additive synth engine. We'll get to the blender later. But the additive synth, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, works by a whole bunch of sine waves that are at various harmonic frequencies. And you can shape that to create any sound. Like literally any sound can be made if you have enough what are called partials in a additive synth engine. You don't have quite that many in this, but you got a whole bunch, and it's got a unique take on additive synthesis with table sizes. So let me show you briefly how this works. By lowering this, you hear I'm cutting off all the low-end harmonics. And by changing the table size, if you've ever played with any kind of audio wave that was on a loop, as you shrink it down, it gets to that kind of sound. That's basically what you got to work with here. With the table size, you set the length of the wave, and if you want, you can get to really like obscene levels. But I'm going to try to make a big trance lead. So I want a nice big wave with all of the harmonics. I like that as a starting basis here. And you've also got bandwidth, which is an interesting thing that will wave the waves. The individual sine waves will expand into other harmonic ranges. You want to be careful with this because as you hear it starts to wobble. And kind of messy sounding. But fortunately, there's a band fall-off thing, which will reduce the amount of each of the successive wavering. So for the first, the fundamental frequency, it's going to do the wavering, and then in each one, it's going to fall off by a percentage. So you can crank that up. So I'm getting the benefit of expanding the bandwidth, but it's not getting super messy like it was before. There's also a stripe, and that will take off some of the partials. So in this instance, it's taking off every third partial to create a different timbre altogether. All right, I like that to start off with, and then there's also a stereoify, which, as you hear, you can get it straight in the center here with mono, and if you've got headphones on, now it's coming off on the sides. And before I get any further, I want to start throwing in some effects and interesting stuff, because I already know this is going to be a big sound, and I want to get into kind of shaping that so it's going to sound good as I work on it. I want to give it some attack. Not quite that much attack. Oh yeah, it's easier to just drag on the numbers. Give it some decay. Not quite that much. Or the sustain just a little. And a bunch of release. That might be too much. Although it is easier if you drag on the numbers, you can't actually see the numbers when you're doing that. So, all right, that sounds good. And there's also a modulation center here where you can do extra weird stuff. I want to throw in a supercharger, which you could just throw a whole bunch of like a unison wave kind of thing at it. But what I'm going to use this for is to add a sub bass. And you can set it to either 2 octaves or 1. I'm just giving it 1, and I don't want any detune. All right, it's already sounding like the basis is something epic, but of course we need to get some reverb on this. Let's go large. All right, so back to the wave chamber. We've got the start of something, right? If we hit the plus sign, it's now made a copy of that wave, and now I can morph between these 2 waves. Like, they're going to sound identical, so that's not going to be a very good example. But let me tweak this, and then I'll show you that. So I want to have the second wave, which is going to be blended from the first, sound very distinct. And I'm going to do that by actually shaping the harmonics here. So I'm going to kind of go for the opposite of what I was doing before. So this is what we had. So it's going to start off with that fuller sound, and then go into this second wave that's cutting off all the mid highs. So it should be like really distinct, hopefully. Let me screw around a little bit with this. See, it was a little too big. I'm thinking that if I start with a big sound, I want it to kind of close in. All right, that's pretty decent. I'm also going to reduce the stripe here to give it a different timbre from this. So now we can start to play with the blending. And there's a few ways to get into this. Everything that you see in the app that has one of these greater than signs can be modulated by a variety of different things. So you've got XY pads that you can assign stuff to, velocity, or a whole bunch of different types of LFOs, or an envelope. And I think that's going to work well for the blend here, where it's going to start off with the first wave and then blend into the second. So I'm going to set the maximum to 100. And oh, I've got a beat step plugged into this to play a sequence, so I don't have to screw around with the keys so much. And just by adding that attack, you can hear it. It's this kind of swell sound, and then it ends on a more definite thing. So like the first sound is kind of fuzzy at the edges, but this is a much more definite punch at the end. And you can actually get really crazy with this. Like you can take any of these, like you see, we started off with a symbol, a modulatable source, and we went into the envelope, and we can actually go another layer and say that, you know, I want this maximum now to be triggered by a square wave LFO, and then I want that to be modulated by something else. I've actually taken this out to 9 layers. I'm not going to go crazy with this because it becomes processor intensive, and recording the screen is already processor intensive. Whoops, I should turn that back to a constant. All right. So with that's sounding exactly very trance-leady. It's big. It's nice. I'm gonna try to chop off some of that high stuff though. I don't think I want any resonance on that. And now that I've chopped it down, I can fatten up the bits that are left over. It's got a whole bunch of different stuff in here. The bit crusher is a lot of fun. You can run LFOs through that and do all kinds of great stuff. But for this, I think a warm fuzz will be more appropriate than any of the other sorts of distortions. And throw in an echo, just to make it bigger and fuller. And you can actually save and recall these things. Like if you go into, let me show you an example here. I can save this as screwing around, and I can go into the blender mode. You see I've named that, it's saved. I can actually swap this out for something else. Not a good example. See, I've got all kinds of different stuff that I've been working on. You can change which wave is being morphed into which wave. You can throw a whole bunch of waves in here. Let me... I kind of like the way that saw sounds at the end, but the bells are kind of goofy. Just a lot of fun to play with. I really like this. The ability to make your own waves inside of the app is a nice addition. I haven't even tried to import my own samples, but I assume you can do that because this is Woogie Juice. He knows what he's doing. If he didn't do that, I'd be amazed, and you should complain to him. But I'm gonna call this done. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed this Let's Play. Share, like, subscribe. Take it easy. One thing that's in here that I really like to play with is the FM oscillator, which is... I've never done a video on FM. Frequency modulation synthesis is basically sending waves at waves. So you use one wave to change another wave. And in Sunvox, it's really simplified. You've only got two waves to work with. You've got a carrier that you hear. As we were listening to that, I was starting to get bored with this, so now I can go back in here. And this is exactly why I like this app so much, right? Like, I get bored with it, and now I can change it altogether.